I was still rebooting our production cluster when the Slack ping came through. Can you check why billing API is erroring out? That was message hash 74 for the day. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. My eyes were fried, throat dry from vending machine coffee, and I was sweating through my company hoodie like it was the final round of Survivor. Infrastructure Edition. Why? Because our tech lead, the one with actual IAM access, had rage quit mid-deploy after a shouting match with the CTO about Kubernetes costs. He'd nuked his own tokens and vanished like a fart in a hurricane. And with the CTO too busy booking his crypto keynote flights, I was left holding the infrastructure duct taped together with Bodo 3 scripts, personal keys, and the sheer willpower of a woman done being polite. For 5 straight days, I spun up auto-scaling groups from scratch, juggled failed deployments like flaming chainsaws, and stopped one particularly nasty billing loop that would have racked up a $40K charge in 6 hours. There were no thank you messages, just more Jira tickets spawning like roaches in a Waffle House kitchen. On the 6th morning, when the last error cleared and I finally re-enabled alerts, I scheduled a meeting with the CTO. Not to gloat, not even to vent, just to ask for a raise, something fair, something modest. Compensation for shouldering the digital equivalent of a hostage situation, while the rest of the office played ping-pong and argued about what kombucha flavor to restock. I walked in, wore my best blazer over the company tee, and laid it all out. I explained how I'd maintained uptime, debugged broken Terraform pipelines, and even migrated legacy endpoints to stop data leaks. I showed him the graphs, flatlined error rates, optimized latency, a dip in our S3 costs. All stuff the VC board would high-five over. And he looked me dead in the eye, sipped his iced oat milk whatever and said, "Your contribution was minimal," just like that, no smirk, no irony, like I'd brought him cold fries. I felt something physically shift in me, not break, not snap, just reroute, the way you redirect a bad DNS entry. You don't scream, you don't cry. Simply update the record and move on. So I nodded, said thanks for your time, walked out, closed the meeting room door gently like a sniper zipping up a case. That afternoon, I submitted my 2 weeks' notice. No Slack drama, no LinkedIn tantrum post. Just a calm farewell message that said, appreciate the learning experience. Documentation and handover folder. Best of luck. Inside, though, I was seething in silence. I didn't want revenge. I wanted correction. The universe had glitched and I intended to debug it. I'll get to the chaos soon. But hey, if this kind of story makes your blood boil and your inner underdog cheer, consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers for the first time ever, and your click is the digital high five I desperately need. Because this story, it's just getting started. The official IAM request form was broken. Ironic, right? One system we needed to onboard AWS roles during a crisis was routed to a SharePoint black hole, guarded by a 403 error, and a ticket queue manned by ghosts. Meanwhile, our CI/CD pipelines were hemorrhaging errors like a slashed artery, and half the engineering team was too scared to touch production without the tech lead's blessing he'd taken with him when he stormed out with his monitors and a bottle of desk whiskey. I did what I had to do. I used my personal AWS root account. Yeah, the one I'd set up back in my freelancing days. The one with no billing caps, no budget alarms, no org-level policy governors to strangle deployments. Just raw, unthrottled authority. I spun up EC2s across 3 regions, rehydrated RDS backups from cold storage, launched auto-scaling groups, rebuilt VPCs, and rewired half our microservices stack. All on my dime, all to save their ass. The alternative was watching our core product die a public death while our investors refresh status dashboards with rising dread. And guess what? Nobody even noticed. No one asked, hey, why are these new instances tagged with your old consulting alias? Or why do these Lambda roles trace back to an external email? They were too busy clapping at my uptime like it was a halftime show, not a frantic one-woman operation fueled by adrenaline and spite. After the firestorm settled, I tried to fix it the right way. Filed the paperwork, sent the emails. Hi, just a heads up, infrastructure is still temporarily running under a personal AWS account. Please assign new org credentials ASAP so I can migrate ownership. No reply, so I followed up. Added screenshots, tagged 2 senior engineers, I even looped in legal. Crickets. On day 4 post-crisis, I opened a security ticket with explicit language. Root key exposure. Financial liability. Recommending credential rotation within 72 hours. The ticket was marked low priority and closed by someone who spelled my name wrong in the reply. I was tired, not just in the sleep-deprived sense, but in the kind of soul-deep weariness that hits when you're the only adult in a room full of toddlers throwing legacy code like finger paint. But I wasn't panicked. I wasn't bitter. I was just tracking, logging every ignored warning like breadcrumbs. In my final week, I prepared the handover doc like a love letter from a jilted ex. I didn't hold back. There were explicit warnings about billing volatility, credential ownership, potential exposure to runaway resource creation, and an entire appendix titled, Why Using Personal AWS Accounts is a Bad Idea, and why you're still doing it. The response, a comment in Confluence. This feels a little paranoid. Paranoid. Not thank you, not duly noted, not even will review. Just a digital shrug from a CTO who thought cloud cost caps were optional and documentation was something interns did to look busy. By that point, I'd stopped hoping for recognition. What I wanted now, no, what I designed for, was inevitability. Because if there's one thing I know about unmanaged root keys on personal billing accounts, they never stay quiet forever. My last day felt like a bad improv sketch held in the break room. They got me a cake, store-brand vanilla with "Will miss you," piped in blue icing like a lie told by a toddler. The frosting was already crusting under the fluorescent lights, and someone had forgotten to bring plates. We were all eating slices off napkins that soaked through after the first bite. The card made the rounds that morning. You could tell who signed it before coffee and who signed it after someone reminded them I was leaving. "Good luck," scribbled next to keep in touch, next to one from the office manager that just said, in pink ink. The CTO didn't sign. He wasn't even there. Word was he had a lunch meeting with potential strategic partners. Translation, trying to pitch our flaky backend as a scalable product. No speeches, just awkward smiles and small talk about where I was going next. I lied and said I was taking time off. The truth would have been too radioactive, too real. I cleaned out my desk like a ghost packing up her own crime scene. Left behind the stickers, the stress ball, the once hopeful notepad that said "Let's crush it," in bold startup font. I didn't touch the company laptop aside from locking the screen. I left all my credentials intact, all the documentation up to date. Every last shell script, every Terraform state file, every Slack integration I'd ever patched into functionality with digital duct tape. I didn't delete a single thing because I didn't need to. There's a myth about revenge that it needs to be loud, dramatic, soaked in gasoline, and lit with a smile. But the most satisfying kind. It's quiet, surgical. You walk out with clean hands and a smile that doesn't quite reach your eyes, knowing the mechanism is already humming beneath their feet. All you have to do is leave it be. As I stepped into the elevator, holding a brown cardboard box that contained little more than a coffee mug and my dignity, a junior dev ran up and said, "Hey, I just wanted to say thanks. For, everything. I know you held the place together during the meltdown." I nodded. "Just doing my job," he frowned. "Seriously though, you sure everything's set up for next week?" With the regional deployments, I smiled. "Everything's documented. The doors closed." Walking to the parking lot, the breeze felt different. Colder, like the building had exhaled me out for good. I didn't feel regret, not pride either. Just a strange, clinical calm. Like finishing a long line of code you know no one will ever understand, but one day, you'll feel it when it runs or doesn't. I tossed the box on the passenger seat and started the car. The dashboard flickered the same way it did every winter morning. I stared at it for a moment. It reminded me of them, flickering, cracked, barely hanging on, and already too late to fix. On the second morning after I left, the office finance manager, Becca, poor soul, opened her inbox to find a billing anomaly alert from AWS. She wasn't the panicky type. $200,431.76 wasn't a number you could write off with a whoops. Especially when the breakdown showed explosive EC2 expansion across US East 1, US West 2, and a curious footprint in App Southeast 1, where we didn't even have active customers. Becca forwarded the alert to engineering with a subject line that read, in all caps, "Urgent, Oz charges exploding." It was 9:13 a.m. By 9:28, the devs were huddled in the war room like kids trying to explain a broken vase before mom got home. The head of platform engineering pulled logs. The SRE contractor rechecked his IAM audit trail. None of the usual suspects matched the activity. No credentials listed in the billing report matched active org-level keys. No recent permission changes. It was like the infrastructure was being run by a ghost in the shell, one who had root, carte blanche, and zero budget constraints. The CTO didn't show up until almost 11, walking in with his usual coffee shop swagger, wearing a Patagonia vest like a tech startup battle flag. Becca confronted him mid-sip. "This is real," she said, eyes wide behind smudged glasses. "This is very real. The next cycle could hit 500,000. He waved her off like she just suggested turning off dark mode. AWS billing systems glitch all the time. Their estimate models aren't gospel. Chill. By noon, a second bill projection came in. $612,024. And this time there were new resources launched, massive compute instances with dedicated GPUs, spot instances flipping in and out of the pool like a machine learning org playing musical chairs with someone else's wallet. The war room turned into a bunker. They tried freezing account activity. Nothing changed. They checked IAM logs, still nothing. Every known credential came back clean, idle, compliant. Yet the machines spun on, their engines humming thousands of miles away, crunching phantom data and draining the company's bank account like a digital vampire. Panic seeped in like a gas leak. Silent at first, then screams. Someone finally pulled up my final handover doc. Page 6, paragraph 3. Bolded, all AWS infrastructure currently running on my personal AWS root account pending migration. If not resolved, billing will route through my account with no enforced spending limits. The CTO skimmed it, tossed the printout on the table like it was radioactive. Why the hell would she do that? He snapped. Becca spoke up. She filed like 4 tickets. I saw them. You closed 2 of them yourself. A long silence. And someone from DevOps piped in. Can we at least contact her? The CTO turned red, then pale, then a weird shade of clam chowder. He grabbed his phone. No, we fixed this ourselves. We're not paying her a dime. That was when the 3rd billing alert came in. The predicted spend? North of $1.2 million. They didn't say it out loud, but the fear finally surfaced. They were locked out of their own infrastructure. And the only person with the keys, already halfway through onboarding at their biggest competitor. By the end of day 3, the office had turned into a pressure cooker of blame, desperation, and slowly unraveling facades. You could feel it in the air, like burnt plastic and old coffee grounds. Slack channels were exploding with threads marked "Fire, Urgent Fire," and every meeting turned into a hostage negotiation with whiteboards. The infrastructure team, who were used to quietly rebuilding what the CTO broke, threw finance under the bus. Why didn't you escalate the budget breach? They barked. Finance fired back. We flagged it. She wrote the doc. She warned you. You signed off. Security pointed fingers at both. This wouldn't have happened if engineering followed credential lifecycle policy. You guys let root keys exist in prod. What is this, 2011? Then the CTO, with sweat beading under his perfect fade, finally stepped up by throwing everyone under the largest, fastest-moving bus in the tech highway. This is the result of rogue configurations, he said in a hastily scheduled all-hands. Unauthorized infrastructure decisions made without proper oversight. Unauthorized like hell. The word hit harder than he expected. Because someone, a junior dev, bless his anxious heart, dug up the emails I'd sent, the ticket logs, the Slack threads, all time-stamped. All polite, professional, increasingly urgent. Paper trail was as clean as my final commit history. She told them, over and over, in writing, but instead of admitting failure, they twisted it. She deliberately used personal keys. She wanted control. She left us exposed. This feels intentional. Sabotage, that's the narrative the CTO clung to like a deflated life vest. Not ignored warnings. Not systemic incompetence. Just a tidy little scapegoat story he could spin for the board, assuming the board didn't already know how deep the disaster ran. Legal got looped in. HR pretended not to be involved. Meanwhile, engineers tried every trick they knew, revoking access, cross-account role assumption, even spinning up temporary credentials to forcibly detach resources. Nothing worked, because those instances, those databases, that load balancer cluster routing all their customer data, they weren't connected to their org. They were running on mine. My root key, my billing account, my regions, my IAM rules. The machines obeyed no command but mine, and I hadn't given one since I walked out with a slice of stale vanilla cake. At one point, they tried tearing everything down manually. But AWS isn't a pet project you can just unplug. Every region had dependency chains like a hydra. Kill one head, 3 more spawned. DNS lagged, load balancers flared up. Auto-healing kicked in like a stubborn ghost with backup plans. And no one, not one single person left, knew the full architecture. Because I hadn't built it for them. I'd built it to work, and now, it was working exactly as designed, just not for them. The first call came in at 11:42 p.m., lighting up my phone like a beacon of desperation. No caller ID. I stared at it from the couch, barefoot, sipping green tea and watching an old episode of Frasier with captions on and sound off. I let it ring. 5 times, then voicemail, 30 seconds later a second call. Same blocked number. This time I answered, hello, silence, breathing, then his voice low, tight, almost raspy, like he'd spent the last 2 hours yelling into a Zoom void and punching conference tables. It's me, he said. Look, I wanted to talk, just us. I didn't respond. He cleared his throat. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're seeing some unexpected AWS activity that seems to trace back to your previous configuration. No one can shut it down. Billings, well, it's gotten out of hand. I adjusted the blanket on my legs. Sounds stressful. Look, we're not trying to accuse you of anything, but the board's breathing down my neck. Legal wants answers. Becca from finance is crying in the break room. You're the only one who knows how the architecture works. If you could just walk us through it, I can help, I said. He let out a sharp, exhaled thank God and launched into a ramble about collaboration and resolution and not letting this minor billing hiccup turn into a major incident. I cut in. My rate is $25,000 per day. Silence, excuse me, plus a $250,000 non-refundable retainer wired to my business account before I touch a keyboard. You've got to be joking. You called me, at midnight on a weekend, with a $1.7 million fire you can't put out because you ignored a year's worth of warnings. So no, I'm not joking. He started to sputter. We were not a Fortune 500 company, okay? That's an insane number. Then I guess you better start selling off monitors. You've got, 70 engineers? Maybe ask each of them what minimal contribution looks like now. A long pause, then the crack I'd been waiting for. His voice dropped to a whisper, raw and shaking. Please, just tell me what you want. I smiled, not gloating, not smug, just done, I want what I've earned. That's it. And then I hung up. 50 minutes later, the wire confirmation came through. Subject line, retainer emergency consulting attached note. Let's work together and move forward. I forwarded it to my lawyer, logged into my secured AWS panel, and began preparing the access handoff. But I wasn't going back. Not really. Because the person who just paid me $250,000 to fix what he refused to listen to, he still had no idea I hadn't even opened the real invoice yet. Elevator doors slid open at 8:02 a.m. sharp. I stepped out dressed for war, black blazer, crisp slacks, no logo tee, no backpack. Just a leather folder under one arm and the kind of expression you wear when you've already won and just showed up for the trophy. The office was quieter than usual. No ping-pong clacks. No espresso grinder shrieking in the kitchenette. Just hushed voices and keyboard tapping that sounded like guilty confessions. Pushed all hands to 10 a.m. and canceled 3 product demos already. Everyone moved like they were waiting for Judgment Day, and I was walking in with the tablet and commandments. Becca met me at the door, eyes puffed and apologetic. Thanks for coming. Really, I don't know what they were thinking. It's okay, I said, though it wasn't. They'd cleared a conference room and filled it with every title that mattered. CTO, VP of Product, Head of Security, Legal Rep, and the CEO himself, suddenly in the building for the first time in weeks. They sat like jurors, unsure if I was there to save them or sentence them. I didn't make small talk. I opened my folder, slid out a printed AWS billing report with red ink circling the latest figure, $2.13 million. Then I placed my laptop down, connected to their guest Wi-Fi, and said, I'll need read access to your current IAM policies and security groups. I'll walk you through the next steps. The CTO tried to ask something, I didn't let him finish. You paid for a solution, let's not waste time. It took 4 hours, that's all. 4 hours to isolate the legacy stacks I'd launched, mirror them into a fresh environment under their billing account, export the config, kill the auto-scaling loops, migrate the DNS, and set up a freeze to stop them from spinning up anything else without triple approval. No drama, no hacks, no keyboard theatrics. Just clean, professional unbinding, one thread at a time. They watched like zoo animals seeing fire for the first time. Quiet awe, mixed with the gnawing shame of knowing it all could have been avoided with one credential transfer. By noon, the fire was out. Final confirmation came in from AWS. All resources under personal account successfully terminated. I packed up my folder. Thank you, the CEO said. We'd like to discuss ongoing. I raised a hand. I'm not staying, he blinked, but the environment is still fragile. We could use someone like you on a short. I opened the door and gestured. A man in a tailored navy suit stepped in. Clean shave, confident smile. Placed a contract envelope on the table with the same casual grace someone might drop a chess piece before saying checkmate. This is the consulting transfer agreement, he said. Going forward, she'll be working with us, but we're happy to offer cross-organizational guidance under NDA, of course. The CTO's face drained like someone had unplugged him from his last defense mechanism. He recognized the logo on the envelope. So did the CEO. Direct competitor. Faster, better funded, ruthless in all the right ways. I turned to the CTO. Since my contribution was so minimal, I figured I'd find somewhere that values minor efforts. Then I walked out, heels clicking across the cheap carpet tiles like a metronome of revenge. The door closed behind me with the soft hiss of poetic justice. And just like that, the woman they dismissed as a support role had just brokered their surrender. Not with sabotage, not with lawsuits, but with competence and the right offer from the wrong side. The fallout came fast and loud. First was the AWS bill, finalized, irreversible, and brutal. The total, $2.94 million, just shy of what it would have cost to properly staff a senior DevOps team for 3 years. Finance tried to negotiate. AWS politely reminded them that ignorance is not a refund policy. Legal muttered something about possible indemnity, and the board started asking questions like, what do you mean we don't know who had the keys? Second came the headlines. A tech blog picked up the story via a whisper from an ex-intern. Startup burns millions in cloud overages due to internal mismanagement hit the front page of Hacker News before lunch. By dinner, the bigger outlets had latched on. The CTO gave a statement full of vague corporate deflection, but it didn't matter. The subreddits were already memeing him into oblivion, pasting his head on exploding data centers and tweeting it with the hashtag #minimalcontribution. But the third blow, that one hurt the most. It started with quiet exits. A backend dev here, a QA lead there. Then the head of platform engineering put in his notice with a polite one-liner. Looking forward to my next chapter. No details, just clean departure energy. By the end of the quarter, nearly 40% of their senior technical team had walked, many of them straight into open roles at my new company. I didn't recruit, I didn't have to. Word travels fast when trust dies slow. And then came the announcement. My new employer held a sleek little virtual launch. No flash, no bravado. Just a quiet reveal of a next-gen scalable SaaS engine that, to anyone watching closely, looked eerily familiar. Same service offerings, same endpoints, same feature set, except it worked. Faster, smarter, cheaper. Same bones, new soul. I wasn't on camera. I didn't need to be. But every line of that system hummed with my fingerprints, the architecture I'd birthed under pressure, refined in silence, and finally liberated from people who thought engineering was something you yelled into existence. A few days after the launch, a package arrived at my desk. Simple brown box. Inside, a massive fruit basket, artfully arranged, packed with everything from blood oranges to imported chocolate-covered blueberries. Sitting atop it was a small white envelope. The card read in black ink and perfect penmanship. Minimal contribution? I disagree. No signature, didn't need one. I placed the note next to my monitor and sat back in my chair. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent and eternal. In the distance, someone else was probably booting up a new cloud stack, oblivious to the cost of arrogance. But me, I wasn't angry anymore. I was billable. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.